Thank you so much to all of you for joining today's Skillshare, Climate Resilience on Urban Farms, Adapting to Extreme Heat. My name is Sonia Lockhart. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at Black Farmer Fund, and we are very excited to have you all here for the session this evening. Before I hand it over to Stephen, Jim, and Molly, I wanted to share a little bit about Black Farmer Fund for those of you who may be newer to our work or who are maybe, joining a Black Farmer Fund Skillshare for the first time. So Black Farmer Fund is a nonprofit community investment fund, and our mission is to nurture Black community wealth and health by investing in Black agricultural systems in the Northeast. We're a nonprofit community investment fund, so that means we're providing funding in the form of both grants and low interest loans to Black farmers and food business owners across the Northeast. And then we pair this funding with technical assistance, as well as community engagement opportunities for networking, learning, and building relationships with other Black food actors in the region. And one of the community engagement opportunities that we provide are these Skillshares, which we're now hosting on a monthly basis on a range of different topics, really just based on community interest and need. And, over the past several years, it's become increasingly clear to us that climate resilience and adaptation is really an urgently needed area of learning for folks in our community. So we're really grateful to Stephen, Jim, and Molly from CISA for being here today and for leading the Skillshare. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing so you all can put up your slides and introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephen. As Sonia mentioned, I work at an organization in Western Massachusetts called Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture. And I work as part of the climate program there. And most of what I do is provide technical assistance to farms that are looking for different ways to either respond to or prepare for impacts of extreme weather that are being caused by climate change. And so that's what I do most of the time. And I work in both urban and rural areas here in Western Massachusetts.
Hey folks, I'm Jim. I'm the Food Access Program Manager at CISA. So I work with farmers markets, promoting healthy food incentives, farmer training. And prior to that, I spent 15 years in Trenton, New Jersey, working in urban agriculture and community development. And I've been working in environmental education, youth education, and farm and food education for close to 40 years. Excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm Molly. I'm a work with Stephen on the climate program, and I'm here to take some notes and help with tech. Thanks for having us.
All right, should we get started then, Sonia? Are we good to go?
Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, just want to welcome everybody here. I really appreciate that you're putting in the chat where you're calling in from. And I'm really enjoying seeing that we've got a really nice geographic spread of farms that are here. And so we are really trying to get a lot of conversation going, as you'll see in some of this webinar today. And it'll be interesting to hear from, what you're seeing and experiencing around climate impacts in your part of the region. So please continue to let us know where you're from and yeah, that's the thing. Okay. And I just want to add to what Jim and Molly and I shared to say that's the organization that we work for, in addition to doing the kinds of work that we're talking about today or supporting farms to do the kind of work that we're talking about today. We do a wide range of we offer a wide range of support services to farms, from marketing to labor-related issues to, as Jim mentioned, food access issues, farmers markets. So if you do happen to be farming in Western Massachusetts, or if you know people who are farming in Western Massachusetts, we would love to hear from you, because we really do have a wide range of support that we can offer to beginning and experienced farmers. With that said, I'm going to share my screen now. And we'll go through a few slides and hopefully start hearing from all of you pretty soon on. So again, welcome. This is a webinar that we are, let me just go into present mode. 1 second. Folks able to see this screen?
There's looks like a loading symbol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. We threw a lot of pictures in here. And apparently it did not like it. There we go. Okay. So on the agenda tonight is in a few seconds, we'd like to hear from some of you about what you're seeing on your farms or on your community gardens, wherever it is that you're growing food. I'm going to give a real brief overview of some of the things that we're seeing happening like around all of our region, more general information about how weather is really changing quickly, how climate is changing quickly, I should say. Jim's going to run through some real specific examples of things that are being done already on urban farms and in community gardens and urban gardens. We're going to do a quick breakout group where we're going to do a Skillshare, hearing, from you what you've been trying to do or what you're interested, what your questions are. And then we'd like to just come back together and also hear where you go to get information about what kinds of things you can be doing to respond or prepare to these climate impacts, so that we can sort of generate amongst everybody some ideas of sources of information or guidance. And then if there's enough time, we have some resources we'll share with you that you can, explore yourselves. And if we don't get to those because of the rest of the agenda, Sonia will be getting those to you in a follow-up email after this event tonight. So the first thing that we wanted to just hear from you all about is if any of you care to share things that you're experiencing on your farm that you've seen, like an impact from some extreme weather. Maybe it's a drought experience, a flooding experience, a new pest that's appeared on your farm. This is just sort of popcorn style if you've got something that you can share with us. And for folks who could turn on their video for this, it'd be great. If not, there'll be a chance to do that during the breakout groups. So any volunteers here to share stuff that has been going on your farms? You can throw it in the chat. You can raise your hand. Anybody here in a flooding area? Or
Oh,
maybe
I'll,
you've
I'll go first. Good evening, everybody. My name is Shay Stewards. I guess I'm a little located further south than what most of you may be. I'm southeast coastal Virginia. Um, One of the things that I'm noticing out here is when we are receiving excessive torrential rains, we deal with a lot of tidal flooding or massive amounts of standing water where we weren't dealing with it before in the past. One thing that I'm noticing more specific on my site is when we do get some of these thunderstorms come in, as short as they may be, my property tends to fill up with water of about 7 to 8 inches, where in the past, that wasn't something that we typically dealt with. So these are some things that I'm noticing a little bit more. I do understand that we are in the tidal plains, but with the changes in the weather phenomenons, I think that it's a contributing factor to some of the things that I am dealing with. And because of the pop-up floodings, I am beginning to notice more salt tolerant plants popping up in places where they shouldn't. And that's kind of given me an idea of maybe I should be changing some things around here on my base site, in terms of what I should be doing with soil amending and or planting, as well as education that I might be providing to my local community.
Yeah, okay. Well, I hope there are some solutions that'll allow you to keep growing what you grow there as the soil biology changes with that. Anybody else have examples of things they've noticed going on their farm or just the climate in general in your area? Allison?
All over the country.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sounded like Allison was trying to share
Sorry,
something with us.
now I'm on in two spaces, so it's a little
Okay.
confusing. Thank you.
Was anybody subjected to the flooding in 2023 that took place when we had so much rain during the summer?
Hi. Yes, I have a farm up in Vermont. I've been trying to do some urban agroforestry in Brooklyn, but in Vermont, we experienced the flooding, and the land we're on there is kind of like a bowl shape because we're on a mountainside. So just a ton of water flowing through, and our high tunnel sits in a kind of the low point. And so we ended up with a lot of blight, a lot of overwatering in the high tunnel area. So we didn't really get much produce that season at all. But we frankly, thankfully spared from the major flooding that hit the towns near us.
Yeah. Same here in Massachusetts. I think there's estimates of about $45 million worth of lost, products because of the flooding in 2023. So yeah, that was a doozy. Okay, anybody else have something going on that they'd like to share about? If not, we can get back into the slides. Dayami mentioned high winds, lots of rain, then periods of drought, and that's different from before?
Just things I'm noticing. Yeah, I don't know that I remember it being so windy so consistently all the time. As like a little kid, I would play in the wind, but it wasn't constant. And now I feel like I was watching the street lights all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, I'm Anna. I think the winds also, I work in different buildings and small, like a micro spaces, if you want to say, but it's very consistent with the raised beds. Like you try to do all the amendments possible for the soil, and then very quickly, because of all the wind and like the drought, it's so hard to keep up with the soil, and the soil becomes very clumpy and it's soil that is soil that comes from bags of soil that are purchased. So like the idea that I know where the soil comes from because I source it from different places, but it's very quickly devolves in the way that it gets very, very like eroded, right? Like, so it's quickly goes to that place and it's hard to keep up. And the wind is like, it really rips a lot of the plants just go down, even when we have them secure. It's just really those type of things that you have to keep up with, the extra things that you weren't already under resourced time for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, adapting to this stuff is a whole other layer of work that farms have to figure out now. It's part of the challenge. You're already so busy. Anna, where are you farming?
I'm farming in the Bronx and in Brooklyn and some in Manhattan.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, if folks have other things they want to throw into the chat, it's always interesting to hear. The wind one is something, when I've been working with a lot of farms putting on their adaptation plans, And I've noticed a lot of interest in windbreaks, a lot of conversation about that. So, heat does generate wind. So that's going to be just part of the mix that we have to be dealing with. All right, so I'm going to get back into these slides. So we've been through this. So I'm just, as I mentioned, and for those folks who came in a little bit later in the evening, I'm just going to go over a few of the trends that we're seeing in terms of how climate is changing in our region in particular. So you can see from the map here, it's a pretty broad region. A lot of this data came from the Northeast Climate Hub, which is a USDA office that covers this region that I think all of us in this conversation are from. And just, we could spend weeks and weeks talking about each one of these. I wish I didn't have to go through them so quickly, but I do feel like it's important just to kind of review them, generally. And what we're seeing now, and this is again based on climate data that the climate hubs report on, is that we're seeing all along the coast of New England is where we're seeing the fastest warming. So and further down. So folks of you who are in coastal areas, you're really feeling it. And also we're seeing over the whole region longer, stronger heat waves. And for those of you who really are in cities, that's especially important given the heat island effect and the capacity for concrete and brick and steel to hold on to heat. We're also getting these longer, wet, muddy seasons at each end, which can affect access to fields for farmers to get in and cultivate and plant. Just like we're seeing heavier rainstorms, the same thing is happening, although I can't say it's happening in Western Massachusetts, but there are a lot of these cases of really heavy, unusual snowfalls. More frequent big rains, large, heavy, concentrated downpours instead of all the rain being spread out over many hours or many days. It all falls in a short period of time. Rain, where before maybe in the year it didn't rain so often, so unpredictability with rain. Same thing with drought. And of course, as we just heard from one of you, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, in Southeast Virginia, sea level rise, which brings a whole host of problems to soil chemistry and also what you can grow. Just quickly, I mostly want you to take a look at this map you can see here. This is just showing you where the places where we've seen the darker the red, the greater the increase in temperature over the last, let's say 40 or 50 years. If you're into graphs, you can see this blue line shows since 1975, it's just gotten hotter and hotter. And so you can see now in this map where in our region that all of us are calling in from are the real hot spots. So, this is just to kind of help us all realize, okay, this is really happening, and to be aware that some areas are impacted a lot more than others. So it's not uniform. And people in those red areas may need more resources. They may need more support because they're dealing with more intense impacts of the changes. So what happens when it gets warmer in general? Well, that warm air, it holds more water, so we get more storms. And as I just mentioned, they can be stronger storms and more frequent. And you can just see a list of just the few ways that these storms affect farms. Flooding, disease spread, you have products you can't sell, unsafe working conditions for labor, topsoil is lost, soil is compacted. Those are just a few of the things that can happen from these warmer temperatures when it gets mixed in with our precipitation. Also, something that really has just come on my radar in the last couple of years is that not only is it getting hotter in the summer, but it's also getting hotter in the winter, which we might kind of notice. We've had mild winters, but it's not the area where we often think, wow, it's really different now. But you can see on this map on the right, again, in our region, it's one of the darkest areas of the country where we're seeing that our winters are also much warmer than they used to be. What does that mean for farmers? Weeds are not killed as easily or killed back. Pests and diseases are not killed off or killed back. We have fewer cold days in the winter for those crops that really need a prolonged period of frost and cold. In an industry like maple syrup, we see an entire region moving. And of course, their harvest period has shifted, which shifts the whole culture that's built around the product. That's one example of what these warming winters can do. And then we have less snowpack, which can often be helpful to retain a little bit of warmth for some of the cover crops and winter crops that we can keep in the ground. And then another one here, more bad news, I'm sorry, is that we're also getting more dry days in the Northeast. So you can see the darker green regions are the regions where we're seeing more and more dry drought days. And of course, this is another thing that affects plant productivity, plant quality, health and safety concerns for workers, and all kinds of aspects of growing food. This is another big change. This might be kind of a positive one. This map basically shows where the growing zones have shifted. So as it's gotten warmer in our region, you can grow crops further north than you used to be able to. So I think we've got someone here from the Hudson River Valley. You can see over here in 2012, just 11 years ago, this green zone did not extend up in the Hudson River Valley. You can see now that's changed, meaning that there could be other crops grown. So maybe crops that grow better further south can be grown further north, which could be a positive for farms. There's still other problems that come along with it, like I mentioned, like pests and other things. But this is one way to kind of start thinking about, what you might do, what crops you might be growing, this year or in 5 years or in 10 years as these trends continue, which they will do. This will continue to change. And the green is going to move further and further north over time. And then also this is something that maybe if you don't, for weeds, it's really good, but also for farmers, in the last 140 years, we now have 14 more growing days. So we have two weeks more of time available to be able to grow crops. And in a region, I know further south in Virginia, this isn't the case, but further north where we have a really short growing season, 2 weeks is a lot. So again, this could be seen as a positive for certain crops that might need a little more time. But again, it's going to make pests and weeds happy too. So just to sum this up, and then I'm going to pass the mic over to Jim. What does this all mean for urban farms and gardeners? Number one, we have to change some of the ways that we grow food. It's inevitable. These trends are not, 1 year, it might be hotter, 1 year not. Over time, we see that this climate's changing and it's going to get more extreme. We have new challenges to growing food, from extreme weather events to new pests to the health and safety of farm workers and gardeners. So sadly, farms need to take on some of these extra challenges, and it will be more work, and we'll have to make shifts in how we run our farms. There are going to be some opportunities, such as new crop varieties and longer growing seasons. And there are really a lot of exciting things being tried. And we'll hear about some of those as our time continues. And finally, there are every day more and more resources out there to help farmers, and that's a very positive sign. Despite what the federal government is going through right now, there is a lot of information out there about how to adapt.
Stephen, Allison has her hand raised.
Sure. Allison?
Yeah, you have on slide number 9, I think it is, a freeze data tool. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about how that works and what you use when you use that.
Let me just take a look at that slide. Freeze data tool. Well, this is a platform where you can go figure out what what the normal onset of freezing in your area is, and look at how that's changed over time and how it is predicted to change into the future. So you would need to go to the EPA website and use that tool.
Okay, thank you.
And we can track down that for you and include it in the resources that we'll share after the webinar.
Would be great. Thanks.
Any other questions? I know that was a super quick run through. You'll get these slides afterwards if you want to spend more time on them. All right, so Jim, you're on. Let me just get the presentation up here 1 second. Okay. Oops. Went back to the beginning. There you go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stephen. All right. So I'm going to talk about urban ag as a tool to counter climate change. So these are the benefits that urban ag provides. So, and you probably know these already, but improved food access, increased vegetative cover. This makes a big difference in cities that are overbuilt, a lot of concrete, not enough trees. So increasing the vegetative cover is good, not just for agriculture, but good for human beings, good for air quality. Carbon sequestration. I mentioned improved air quality, a reduced food waste. If you can cycle food waste, compost that, and put that back to use in local agriculture, that's better than treating it as garbage and burying it somewhere or sending it away. Reduced emissions. You're lowering your food miles if you're producing food closer to where people eat it. Lowering your risk of flooding. So that's also tied to increased vegetative cover. Water retention and capture. So I'll go through some of these green infrastructure tools about, yes, you want to manage water, but there's ways that you can capture it and redirect it and, make it serve your purposes. And another benefit here is increased green space available for recreation and physical exercise. So next slide.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, I'll have you switch the slides for me. So additional benefits, so other ecosystem services. So you've got pollinator and beneficial insect diversity. It also creates wildlife habitat in urban areas, and it also promotes economic development, youth education, environmental education, and helps foster a sense of stewardship. So you may think very narrowly about, okay, we're going to produce food, but it has all these other side benefits as well. Next slide. So these are the key practices that I'm going to focus on, and I have some photos just to show some examples. So you want to increase your vegetative cover, so you try to do plantings as densely as possible. You really don't want to have soil exposed, so it doesn't dry out, so it doesn't wash away. And that vegetative cover, you want to treat where you're growing as a sponge to be able to absorb that water, take advantage of it, kind of capture it and store it so it's not just washing through all at once. Increasing your organic matter for water retention. This also has soil benefits as well. You need to manage your water usage. So conserving water, you can use things like drip irrigation. You could adjust your timing of when you water. So if you have really hot days, you may just be wasting your water if you're using an overhead sprinkler at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you could actually be causing some shock to your plants if you're using water that's, say you've got water from a well that's 50 degrees and you're putting it on, tomato plants that are doing a nice comfy 90 degrees. They're not gonna like that. You want to keep, again, I mentioned keeping your soil covered. So, really promoting the use of mulches, whether they're natural or artificial or cover crops. If you're using artificial mulches, depending on the color of your mulch, if you're using black mulch, that can help your soil warm up quicker in the spring. If you're using like a white or a reflective mulch, that can prevent your soil from getting too hot in the summer. So there's different strategies you can use to regulate that. I prefer natural mulches. You're not dealing with plastic or kind of like microplastics, getting into your food as well. And then also promoting the use of cover crops again. So building your soil fertility, making sure you don't have bare soil, and you can actually incorporate your plantings right into cover crops as well. So when you think about your plantings, think about kind of layering or stacking. So your plants they do better when they're in close proximity to others. And University of Massachusetts is doing some research on vegetable production, like growing tomatoes or corn into clover. So it's another way to kind of feed your soil, but then also limit soil erosion. Throw shade in a good way. So you can use shade cloth on your hoop houses. You can create structures that kind of can provide some shade for other plants, whether it's a trellis, or you can kind of strategically place, grow your crops near buildings. So if they were in full sun, they might be getting scorched because of too much exposure. But you can kind of, play around with, different ways to provide them some of that shelter. And that actually, someone mentioned wind issues earlier. If you can kind of slow down your wind with plantings, whether it's, trees, plants, shrubs, other things, you can kind of reduce some of your wind shear as well. You can also select varieties for hardiness or other desirable traits. So if you're looking at, lettuce or cilantro, you may want to plant a variety that bolts later than others. If you have extended, periods of wetness and you're struggling with fungal diseases, you may want to look at varieties that are resistant to blight or Phytophthora or different things like that. And you can also focus on, varieties that are adapted to your region. So this is a good, reason to get involved in seed swaps and seed shares. Somebody's maybe growing an amazing variety of okra in Oklahoma, but your climate is not like that. You may want to seek out somebody who has success in growing a particular variety where you are, and, help kind of develop those traits in the plants as well, and share those seeds. You'll also need to monitor for increased pest disease and weed pressure. Some pests are wintering over. A lot of nasty weeds are, they may never go away in the winter. And protect your people. So whether it's your workers or it's the public that are visiting sites that you may utilize for public education, making sure you've got shade structures, you've got, a cool place for them to go. Maybe it's adjusting your work or your public hours. So starting your work crews earlier to take advantage of the time where it's not so hot, or, working later in the evening. And, use the extended growing season to your advantage. Especially in urban areas with urban heat index, you may be even more days or a week ahead of the USDA hardiness zone. So another reason to, keep records, pay attention to the weather, and, you may have some more, time to grow marketable crops. Okay, next slide. So upper left, this is a educational garden that I helped develop in Trenton. And this was a concrete park at one point, then it became lawn. And over the course of 10 years, we put a lot of work into this to develop vegetable production, develop a training garden. Outside the fence, there's a public orchard of 60 fruit trees, and they're pretty young at this point, but this was all a strategy to really cram a whole lot of plant matter into this one particular space for educational purposes, for production purposes, but then also to have functional growing space. And here's a large community garden on the right. That's probably 3/4 of an acre with folks from all over the world gardening together. And that's just wall-to-wall vegetables. So there's really, it's almost a function of you want to use all the space you have, but a side benefit is, there's not extra space for, issues with soil erosion or, increased weed pressure. And the bottom left is just a vacant lot that was not easy to access. So we planted black oil sunflower seeds in there for wildlife habitat and for beauty. All right, next slide. And this is the training garden. So here's an example of a raised bed, and somebody, they have all the stuff just packed in here. But you don't want to pack stuff in there so much that it's decreasing, the output of your vegetables. So there's kind of a happy medium there. And a lot of these beds have built-in trellises too, so those can kind of create a little shade or a windbreak for the other folks in the training garden. Next slide. And this is actually an urban farm on a brownfield site. So there's a clay cap here. So water pools up, really terribly. So that's why they're using this organic mulch, between the rows, but then water permeable landscape fabric with, holes cut or burned into it for their actual crops. So, you may see this situation reversed in other places where you're using that salt hay or that straw or hay mulch, around your crops to keep weeds down, but then also keep moisture in your soil there. Next slide. And this is a low-tech hoop house where we would take the plastic off in the summer, put mesh up over the sides, and then we would grow things like tomatoes, climbing beans up there, and then that would create some shade for crops in the hoop house. So we can grow lettuces later on into the season because they were shaded by the climbing beans. So just kind of adapting a different strategy here. Next slide. And this is a perennial herb and medicinal garden. So this is just, everything is just packed in here. So it was kind of scrawny when it first started out, but we were able to really kind of, interplant and kind of understand how, plants would develop, and it has this really nice, amazing effect. You wouldn't think that you were right in the middle of the city here. Next slide. Okay, we'll talk about green infrastructure. So this is really using plant or soil systems, stormwater water harvest and reuse, or landscaping to store, infiltrate, or evapotranspirate stormwater. So basically controlling water using natural means. And I'll give you a few examples here. So next slide. So rainwater capture using rain gardens, cisterns, rain barrels, permeable paving, allowing the water to infiltrate and not, end up in the stormwater system. Community forestry, but then also including, fruit trees or edible trees as part of that. So yes, think about your own site, but try to work in a larger context to promote, more greening in the cities as well. Green roofs reduce heating and cooling costs in buildings, land preservation, and it can also support complete streets as well. So making sure that cities are walkable and safe for people of all abilities, methods of transportation, so bikers, pedestrians. So there's ways to incorporate, green elements into that as well. Okay, next slide. So harvesting rainwater, so it's free. So 1 inch of rain yields about 2/3 of a gallon of water. So if you have a 10 by 10 foot shade structure, you can get 62 gallons of water with just 1 inch of rain. And if you have something larger than that, it just keeps increasing. So I'll give you some examples of shade structures that we use. So the last one, this is a 1,500 gallon cistern. So this would capture all the rainwater off of this building. And it has a submersible electric pump that we would use to run the drip irrigation system or water the community orchard. And anything that overflowed went into a rain garden. So we were keeping water out of the stormwater system probably 364 days out of the year. Only in extreme, rain events would any go into the stormwater system. Next slide. And this is a small 500 gallon setup at a school. And so this was a middle school, and the kids had like a great time using this old fashioned pump to fill up their watering cans to water their raised bed. So it's functional and it's educational. Next slide. And we're running a rain barrel workshop here so folks could capture water from their own homes. And in the background, you can see the shade structure, and in the rear, there's a large IBC tote which holds 275 gallons of water there. So, we just tried to capture it wherever we could. Next slide. Okay.
That's it.
Those are my examples. And now back to you.
All right. Any questions for Jim?
There's one in the chat.
Okay.
Can clover be used as a cover crop to help shade the bare soil?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that is, there's actually another organization in this area that is running trials of this system all over the place. And if you're interested in getting involved, would be able to connect you. And not only to shade the bare soil, but also to plant right into, to be like a permanent permanent ground cover or cover crop, kind of. Yeah. So
I only asked because we had used buckwheat, and buckwheat grows tall, but it throws too much shade on some of the plants that we're trying to grow. So understanding clover grows a little bit more close to the ground, which allows those taller plants or those more shorter plants to be able to get that sunlight. Now, what kind of clover would be grown? Would it be that purple clover?
Dutch white clover is what they're running these trials with.
Dutch white?
Yeah, and I think that's why it doesn't grow as high. That's exactly one of the characteristics that's being looked at, so that the crops can grow up over it.
Mm-hmm. Because sometimes it's hard for us to get sterilized straw and everything else, and we don't really want to use hay, and then some mulches have certain dyes and everything else, and it can be pricey. So if we can actually grow something and then reutilize that and incorporate that back into the soil, that'll be excellent.
Yeah. Well, we'll put some contact information for anybody that wants to learn more about this, for this organization called Momentum that is running these kinds of trials. Where are you farming?
Western New York.
Okay.
Buffalo.
Pardon?
Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo. Okay. There might even be some folks involved out that way. I'll look into it. We have a question: for areas that have soil too contaminated for human eating, would having some cover crop or pollinator planting be of good use in that space, other than trying raised beds for human edible plants? Yes, I think, soil remediation can happen in a lot of different ways. Cover cropping is one of them, or just dedicating that space to pollinators and biodiversity that will be useful in the rest of your growing space, I think are wonderful alternatives. And in terms of putting raised beds, as far as I know, if you're going to grow food for humans, I think you need to have some kind of barrier between your raised beds and what's underneath. And yeah, So that's just something to think about if you do go in that direction. So this next little section here, we wanted to give other folks in the room, have you been trying anything? Have you done rainwater catchment? I see another question here, but this is also a chance for maybe if you all have been, seeing something change and trying to do something about it, what has been your experiment or your experience? So Nina, how about, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, we've been trying quite a few of these. I wanted to ask a question. I teach at your college in Jamaica, Queens, and I've been trying to get them to implement an urban agroforest on the land there because it is some of the last remaining green space in Jamaica, Queens. And I wondered, one, would you share this presentation because I have a meeting with the buildings and grounds person to talk about this? But also, what kind of advocacy or legislation are you all looking at or trying to help implement? Because what I'm finding most problematic are the regulations around what can be done in terms of food production in cities, and very little understanding of the importance of doing this. So oh, great. Thank you, Sonia. So I wanted to ask about what kind of advocacy in cities and states are happening on the ground so that there's less pushback around these kinds of projects. Sorry, thank you.
Jim, I'm wondering if you have something to share in that regard. I know Jim works a lot on food access, and this is part of the food access puzzle.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a challenge because, municipalities can each sort of have their own, ways to incentivize urban agriculture, but then also disincentivize it too. So sharing best practices and having examples of where it's worked, I think is very important. So when I was in New Jersey, it was important to think about food access and community greening as part of a bigger whole too. So, so I would work to pass community gardening ordinances, but then also make sure that when the city was updating their land development ordinances, that they were considering food uses as well, or considering beekeeping, or raising poultry. And then using also opportunities to update master plans for the city to incorporate that as well. So, and that's one thing that's going on in Massachusetts. Folks are advocating for reuse of vacant lots for urban agriculture, but then trying to come up with some shared blueprints for policies that can make it easier for everybody, and not just in Massachusetts, but everywhere. I can, as a follow-up, I can try to put together some resources that might be helpful.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
Okay, it looks like we have a question from T. Does wood chips as mulch deplete soil nitrogen? Would you use around crops if you are growing if fighting for the nitrogen? Jim, do you have a comment there? Sometimes it can depend on the type of wood chips that you're using, so I don't know if there's like a uniform response to that question, but
yeah, the wood chips can definitely scavenge nitrogen, so you don't really want them, mixed in with your plantings. And I would only use wood chips kind of as your pathway or around, trees and shrubs to give it a chance to break down, and then you can kind of incorporate it back into your beds. But for organic mulches, use things like salt hay, hay or straw, but then you could also get weed seeds in there too. I'm a big fan of just shredded leaves. That's an underutilized resource. So use your mulching lawnmower to bag up your leaves and collect them, or just get leaf compost from municipal facilities.
You also mentioned creating a barrier between raised beds and ground soil to prevent the leaching of the toxicity in ground soil. What kinds of natural barriers would you recommend as opposed to plastic and things like that? Because as you mentioned, we don't want microplastics in the soil.
Yeah, that's a tough one for, when I've done raised beds in areas that had some concern with heavy metals. For the most part, if the lead levels were that of that concern, I would recommend from staying away from them altogether. But if it was a manageable level that you could actually safely and you wanted to do raised beds, we would use that permeable landscape fabric, which is actually that's plastic. So as far as a natural one, that's kind of tough.
Yeah.
Unless you're building an actual stone or brick, um, you know, like a really impermeable barrier.
One of the things we were proposing was to do hugelkultur, and sort of dig down into the soil, putting in all of those wood chips and branches and things like that, and then mounding the soil on top. So not quite a raised bed, but mounded. Is that something that you think would be sufficient to protect from any sort of contamination in the soil, or is that just not sufficient?
Yeah, that's a tough one. If there's, contamination of a certain level, yeah, I'd have some real concerns about, like if you're, yeah. I know that's not a very good answer. I understand. But yeah, it's hard to kind of, minimize contaminated soil, like kind of maybe coming up with freeze thaw cycles, or somebody digging. I've seen just like a visual barrier before that's like kind of, it's like a red flag. It's like orange construction netting again, which is plastic. But like if you see that, dig no further. Seen, brownfield sites where asphalt or cement is essentially your safest cap, and then you're building up berms of soil on top of that, or a big, putting in a big clay cap. The one picture that I had in my slideshow, that was 18 inches of clay that was put over a brown.
We have a comment here. I've seen people do rooftop gardens to purify some of the rainwater before it goes into the rain barrels. Yes, I've seen that done as well. Um, again, rooftop gardens are complicated. So, if you're going to get into that, there's a lot of information about out there how to do it well. So, you are not causing problems in the future, but they can, as Jim pointed out, produce a lot of water. And as we get into periods of longer drought, we need to be planning for that high possibility that we will need backup water and clean backup water, because there can be a lot of contaminants in the rainwater that falls, especially in urban areas. So I think that's a really good point to make. Thank you. Have you seen any drawbacks to using agricultural easements on urban open spaces? That one there, I do not have experience with. Jim, did you run into that at all, or anybody in the room here have experience with that?
If there's a way to preserve it, and you could do it through an ag easement, I would go for it. I think, that's the biggest challenge, is keeping the amount of open space as possible in cities. In New Jersey, one way that the org I worked with was able to preserve community gardens, they used a Green Acres program, which was essentially the state used to keep, forest and kind of, wild areas that people really wouldn't, think of to preserve active, community gardens in the city. But, they were able to do that, especially when, land tenure was very difficult. They were giving gardeners, community gardeners who had been there for 30 or 40 years, just single year leases. So this was kind of a creative end run around municipal policy as a way to, preserve community agriculture as open space. So, it just takes some creative thinking.
I think Shay has her hand raised.
Yeah. Shay?
All right, thanks everybody. So something that I've been doing out here in my area is campaigning hard for urban agriculture in the state of Virginia, and more so to be recognized in the Right to Farm Act here, more so because of the problems that I'm having with the local municipalities not not being welcome or being open to the idea of urban ag. And conversations that I've started with the local NRCS, the FSA office, and just all the other different government agencies that are supposed to work with us. I've driven up enough buzz in that conversation to where people are beginning to start having the conversation to allow for some of these urban green spaces to be allotted into conservation. Um, so we have efforts in the rural community keeping agricultural land as agricultural land. And since we don't have very much green space remaining in urban sectors, to see what could be done, if anything, to have some of those locations, be allotted into conservation would.
Yeah. No, I think that's another great approach. And I think we've got to be figuring out how to
Come in,
insert.
a place to go outside, relax, get grounded and touch grass. I was told this information, would be start to be pushed up down the ladder, but this was prior to the elections. So I'm just going to continue to beaten the path here and raising the question, what can we do in the urban sector to try to protect some of these green spaces? So that might be a suggestion to do where y'all are as well. Because the way I look at it, the more people start talking about it, the more conversation begins to happen, and then more people become aware.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up with what Shay said. I am in complete agreement. I wondered if that might be possible for a future conversation about how we could be lobbying together in each of our individual communities, but in a more unified way with language that's very compelling to try to change some of the zoning regulations and things like that. And I love the idea of the conservation efforts. So I'm really interested in whether people have had any success. Like you were mentioning the park that was asphalt that then had become a community garden. Maybe a conversation at some point about how that happened.
Great ideas. Thank you, both of you. Bill, yes, you can use charcoal to filter your rainwater. You can, run it through beforehand or let it come through a second chamber that it filters after collecting in the main chamber. Yeah. Any other questions or comments, things that you're doing, trying, have seen work? We don't have too much time left. I think what I'm going to do is pivot and just share a few of the resources where you would be able to go and, learn more yourselves. And some of these you'll certainly be aware of, others you might not be. And also some of them are a little bit Massachusetts centric, but I think you'll be able to find something similar for wherever it is that you're farming at this point. So these are just ideas, and you can sort of track down what's more appropriate to your particular place than maybe the ones that I'll share with you. So let's see here. Our talk. The first thing, there are extension offices. Can everybody see the map here?
Yep.
Just a reminder that we do pay for, as taxpayers, extension offices. We can tell them what our problems are. You're talking about lobbying and advocacy for these, sometimes it can happen through these offices where if enough people are saying, we need help with urban agriculture in our area, they should respond. Of course, it's going to be harder in the short term for that. But I just like to show this map to remind everybody that we do have these offices in all states that should have personnel that are prepared to help us address some of these changes that we're experiencing. Let's see. Next one, just a reminder of YouTube. I just went in today for this talk and I stuck up here in the search bar, urban farm climate change solutions, and I just got so many videos. And there, so many people out there doing what we're doing and recording what they're doing. So just don't forget, and if it's not YouTube, there'll be other platforms that you can use if that's not the space you want to use. But I do often refer people here and find a lot out myself when I'm trying to learn something. So just a reminder that that's also available. Also, this is again going to be a little Western Massachusetts centric, but on our website, CISA does have, and we'll share this link with you, a pretty extensive collection of playlists. So each of these is a playlist where we have videos on different topics, all related to adaptation to climate change. So you can go in here, and if you're interested in learning and watching about soil health and management, like you can see here, you can go in here, check it out. So we have a lot of different playlists on different topics, as you can see here. So that's another place that you can go, and these are not all specific to Western Massachusetts. There's a lot of different kinds of people making videos out there. So that's going to be a little more regional than our site specifically. This is something I would really encourage folks to consider signing up for. This is put out by the University of Massachusetts Extension Vegetable Program. They put out a newsletter called the Vegetable Notes, and this has a broader reach than just Massachusetts. Folks from all over the region subscribe to this, and each week during the growing season and every month during the winter season, you get a really great up-to-date email that's saying, what pests are we seeing? Has the potato beetle arrived? And it really can be a source to get up-to-date information on how to address these issues, how to control them, how to respond to them. So this, again, all these are going to be in the follow-up list, and you can subscribe here to this and see if it's useful for you. Also, a reminder, as taxpayers, we also support the Natural Resource Conservation Service. I'm pretty sure this will be present in all of your states. This is the national web page, and you can get into your state office right here on this button. And again, these are offices that are supported by taxpayers, and their mission is to support farmers who are trying to address conservation issues, resource issues on their farms, water, air, and so forth. So they have funds available, grants available, other resources available, and I would encourage you to take a look at what they offer in your state. Excuse me. This was a resource that Jim mentioned to me that he's interacted with, an organization called Black Farmers and Urban Gardeners. If you're not familiar with them, they have a wonderful annual conference, and on their website, just a lot of resources that could be, again, sources of support for you. Also, if you're into organic growing, not necessarily certified organic growing, but just growing that follows the principles of organic production, here in the Northeast, every state has an office or a team from the Northeast Organic Farming Association. And so this is their main page, and you can go in here and you can find the offices of your state, and they often have grants, they have educational programs, they organize events, they'll have webinars just like this. And so they can become another place where you can go and interact with other farmers and hear, updates on what's happening, opportunities for grants. Just a plug for our organization. If you're, within our region, we'll share this with you. We do offer a climate change and farming bulletin that you can sign up for. This comes out 3 or 4 times a year. And it has a lot of grant programs, some of our educational programming, and other opportunities related to adapting farms and gardens to climate impacts. And on our page, I just want to point this out to everybody. And again, this might not be the exact right place for you to go, but there are, and we're here hosted by the Black Farmers Fund, and so we're right within one of those. But there is it's difficult right now with what's happening federally, but nonetheless, there are and will continue to be sources of financial and technical assistance support for what you're trying to do. And for example, on our website, we do have a list of, where farmers can go and learn about these grants that are available. As an organization, we do offer help with reviewing grants that are being prepared. We don't write grants, but, just encouraging folks to remember that there are resources out there, including financial resources to help farms. And we'll include some of those in our follow-up information. So we are at 6:11. We just have a few minutes. Any questions about all those resources? Any resources that you have, you could pop in the chat for us or tell us where you go. Tell everybody here where you found to be useful as we build out a resource collection for urban farmers. Yeah, it looks like Molly or Jim stuck in our links there in the chat, but if you've got some, shout them out or plop them in the chat here. How many of you here have interacted with your NRCS offices? I'm curious what that's been like. I see a smile there from Bill. Allison.
Yeah, we have a really, really good relationship with our NRCS office. We have a couple programs with them. They're always checking on us.
Wonderful.
Yeah, trying to find out what we need. Even one year we had a really bad storm and they came into the city and plowed everybody's farm. And so, yeah, we have a good relationship with them.
And we have Jere, if I'm getting your name correct, you're a conservation planner for the NRCS. That's wonderful. Great.
Yeah, thank you. My main focus is urban ag, so I appreciate you having the space and sharing your knowledge.
Sure thing. It's great to have you here.
The NRCS in my region is really good. They're always very helpful. If they can't help, they find ways to answer questions. So I'm very happy with that. I even was able to get a high tunnel with the help of them. They have a
Wonderful.
lot of opportunities. So I would suggest link up your NRCS. Sometimes it takes a while, so start sooner than later and getting that process going.
And they have greatly expanded what they consider a farm now. I think most urban farms, urban gardens, really, you can be really small and still qualify for support. So, Shai, did you have something else to share?
Yeah, just real quick on the NRCS experience. A couple of years back, I took a international ag trip to Ecuador, and one of the guys on the trip with us was an NRCS agent, not my agent, but he happened to be the agent for the farmer that I mentor under. And when we got back, went our separate ways or whatnot, and he was talking to the farmer, Mr. Slade, about me. And a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call about an opportunity that literally changed me and my family's life. So even though he wasn't my agent and didn't help me per se with my farm, he definitely helped me with my farming journey. So that's my share with working with the NRCS.
Great. It's really nice to hear these positive reports about the NRCS. Appreciate it. And they do have grants available, for a lot of the practices they will recommend on your farm or that together you'll identify. They do pay for up to 50% of those, the implementation costs. So you can receive payments for, if you follow the guidelines, let's say you want to do cover cropping, if your planner and Jerry, you would know this probably more than me, puts that into your conservation plan, then you can receive payments for implementing that. So, yeah. And just like getting help with the high tunnel, what beats that? So we are right at 6:15. I wish we had more time to talk. Maybe we'll be back sometime. I'll wait for Sonia to let me know about that. But we will be including our contact information if you want to get in touch with Jim or me through the climate program. And if if you're out of our region, we often can help get you in touch with folks working in your region that might be able to provide some of the same support that we do here in Massachusetts.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen, Jim, and Molly. This has been really great. And the conversation has been amazing with all the resources being shared. As was mentioned, I'm going to follow up in the next couple of days with the slides, the recording, all of the resources mentioned, and also the ones that have been dropped in the chat throughout. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, thank you all so much for being here this evening and for engaging with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for growing food, everybody. If that's what you do. Thank you so
That's
much.
what we do.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Don't forget